Hello everyone, welcome to the daily newspaper analysis, and these are for the date of 11th of January 2025. So let us move on to the topics for discussion for today. The first article titled Selection Process for the Chief Election Commissioner from the Indian Express talks about the newly election process involved through the Act of CEC 2023. Next article titled 2024 recorded as the hottest year through the Indian Express talks about the temperature rise of 1.5 degrees Celsius in the year 2024. The next article title talks about curbing hate speech, gives the importance of the curbing of the fact checking program in both the Facebook and Instagram, and this article is from the Hindu. And the next article title top industrial output discusses about the rise in the industrial sector, and this article is from the Live Mint. So let us move on to the articles discussion one by one. Now moving on to the first news titled in a first selection process for the next chief election commissioner casts wider net. So the article discusses about the changes in the selection process of the chief election commissioner or the CEC and other election commissioners, that is the EC, which also involves people from the higher posts such as the prime minister, such as the leader of opposition, and also the union minister in the process of the selection process. So the panel for the first time includes more than 5 people, which comprises of people from the higher post. Thus it brings in a different perspectives for the selection process and the appointment process. So in light of this article, we would be seeing the importance of the Election Commission of India, their role, their importance, and also we would be seeing the selection process or the appointment process. So first, for the appointment of the CEC, it comes under the Act of Chief Election Commissioners and Election Commissioners, that is the Appointment Conditions of Service Term of Office Act of 2023. So here I repeat the Act. The appointment process of the CEC comes under the Act of Chief Election Commissioners and Election Commissioners, that is the Appointment Conditions of Service Term of Office Act of 2023. So this act was replaced by an earlier act called Election Commissioners, that is the Conditions of Service of Election Commissioners and Transaction of Business Act of 1991. It's not that important, but we need to know under before what act was there and what was replaced. So this act looks over or have an outline on the procedure on the appointment of the CEC and the ECs, and also they bring in service conditions and about the tenure of the post available. Now let us move on to the importance of the role of the CEC and the ECs. So ultimately both the post comes under the Election Commission of India. Election Commission of India is a constitutional body which comes under the 15th part of the Constitution. So under the constitutional provisions under Article 324, they are one of the vital constitutional bodies which ensures having free and fair elections. So the CEC and the ECs empowers the Election Commission of India to have a free and fair elections and oversees and conducts the elections for all of the parliament, for all of the state legislatures, and also for the office of both the president and the vice president. So looking into the other roles of the Election Commission of India through the CEC and EC, they appoint CEC and other election commissioners. They also ensure the CEC's independence. So for the electoral system, when it comes to the electoral system and the administration process, and also having constitutional safeguards, it helps in the independence of both the chief election commissioners as well as the election commissioners during the election process. Thus it upholds the democratic principles. Now looking into the removal, the CEC's removal is similar to the Supreme Court of Indian judge by the process of impeachment. So impeachment is nothing but a removal of the CEC under the grounds of misbehavior or incapacity. Thus the CEC's removal is through impeachment, but the removal of the EC would be different. So they are not removed under the grounds of impeachment, but they are removed under the recommendation of the Chief Election Commissioners. So these are the points when it comes to the removal of both the CEC and EC. So along with the impeachment, the CEC needs to be removed under having a special majority by both the houses, or by having 2 by 3 share of vote by the present members in both the houses. So these are the removal process. Now let us move on to the role and powers of the Election Commission of India. First is their superintendence, that is nothing but having a oversight or having a supervision, direction and control of the elections. They stand as an advisory jurisdiction on the disqualifications of the MPs and MLAs, which comes under the 10th schedule. So they can also be, this point can also be taken for the constitutional provisions. Now looking into the significance of the CEC posting, first they uphold the democratic integrity. So being an independent office through the Election Commission of India, as I told before, they hold both the democratic as well as the federal principles of our country India through having a free and fair elections and being independent from all of the electoral threats, thus ensuring free and fair and transparent elections. Now let us look into the appointment process. First, the Ministry of Law forms the search committee. So the search committee is nothing but it's like a wing committee which is headed by the cabinet secretary, where they given names or they suggest names for the selection committee. So it is not, they are not, so the selection committee is not bound or mandatory to take in the recommendations given by the search committee. So this committee helps to have names for the selection committee. Then the selection committee involves people from higher posts such as the Prime Minister, who is the chairperson, then the leader of opposition and the union minister, who is nominated by the Prime Minister. So they all can select the internal or external candidates. So having this appointment process through the new Act of 2023, this new selection process breaks from the seniority based succession. That is nothing but having the, so before it was how the senior most people of the election commissioner would be automatically appointed as the CEC, but this time they are bringing in selection process through involving of candidates from both internal as well as external perspectives. So this breaks from the seniority based succession. Next is it allows external candidates, that it involves and prospers inclusivity, and finally enhances the checks and balances, ultimately for having the importance for good governance. Now looking into their tenure of the selection panel, or the members who are in the being selected in the selection panel, they can be 6 years or until the age of 65, which is earlier. So looking into the eligibility, here any candidate who are getting selected, they should be in equivalent rank of the Secretary of the Government of India. Thus, after the selection panels gives in the names, ultimately it would be the president who would be selecting the CEC as well as the EC based on their recommendations. So I hope the article is very clear and very simple to understand. Now let us move on to the prelims question. Consider the following statement regarding the Chief Election Commissioner. So all of these statements are right. The provision comes under the Article 324 of the Constitution. Here the removal process is similar to the Supreme Court judge. So this new Act of 2023 brings in the candidates from outside the Election Commission. The news article discusses about how the UN Rights Chief defends the regulation of the hate speech and the harmful content in social media fields like the Facebook and Instagram. So here there has been concerns raised over the censorship and how the fact checking program in the Facebook as well as in the Instagram is not up to the real world consequences of the hate speech and comments being given. So he emphasized the need to scrap that fact checking program in both the Facebook and Instagram. Thus it brings in the importance of having a matter of accountability in the digital space, as well as having the importance of looking into the unchecked hate comments. So in light of this article, we'd be seeing about the role of the UN rights chief, the structure, the composition and structure of the United Nations council when it comes to the human rights. So first let us look into the United Nations Human Rights Council. So it was established in 2006 under the United Nations General Assembly under the resolution of 60/251. So it replaced the Union Commission on Human Rights. The United Nations Human Rights Council is established under the UN General Assembly to promote and protect the global human rights, to address the violations, and to recommend improvements whenever any issues arise on the human rights globally. So the headquarters comes under Geneva of Switzerland, and the parent body. So parent body is nothing but the most main central or the important body is the United Nations. So here the United Nations is a international organization which works for the peace and prosperity across the globes. The United Nations has 6 organs, that is the 6 wings. So the 6 wings would involve UNSC, that is the United Nations Security Council, the UNGA, that is the United Nations General Assembly. Next would be the International Court of Justice. Next would be the UN Economic and Social Council. Next would be the Secretariat, and next would be the Trusteeship Council, which is not active. So these are the 6 main organs when it comes to the international organization of the UN. So the United Nations Human Rights Council comes under the UN General Assembly, where the parent body is the United Nations. So I hope this is clear. Now let us look into their membership. It involves 47 member states, and looking into the election process, it is elected by the UN General Assembly through a majority vote, and they would be having a 3-year term, and there won't be any immediate re-election after 2 consecutive terms of the head of the United Nations Human Rights Council. So looking into the allocation of the member states, here the Latin American Caribbean countries have 8 seats. Looking into the African countries, they are having 13 seats. Looking into the Western Europe and other countries, 7 seats are available, and Eastern Europe considers 6 seats, and looking into the Asia Pacific zone, there are almost 13 seats. So it generally involves every part of the global for the UNHRC, that is the United Nations Human Rights Council, so that there is addressing of human rights throughout the globe. Now we have seen the United Nations Human Rights Council. Next body we will be seeing about Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. So here the body is established in 1993, also under the UN General Assembly under this resolution of 48/141. Here it's not that important to know the resolution, but it is important to know under which organ or which wing they have been appointed on or established on, and their headquarters are also in the Geneva of Switzerland, and the parent body would be UN Secretariat. So as I told before, UN Secretariat is also one of the wing of the United Nations. So they work, it was established under the UN General, but the parent body would be the UN Secretary. And looking into their mandate, they promote and protect the human rights for the international law. So here the difference between the UNHRC and the OHCHR is the functionality. Here this organization works for the mandating of the policies and agendas, while this organization, that is the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights, implement those policies and agendas. So this would be the difference between these two bodies as a one-liner. Now looking into their functions, first they promote human rights through all spaces, let it be both digital as well as in real, and next would be the monitoring and reporting of the issues or threats through the protecting of the human rights. Next is the important one, which is the any treaty implementation. So UN body is an international body along with a lot of involvement of specialized agencies, lot of special rapporteurs that we'll be seeing in further slides. So along with having the involvement of treaty implementation, they bring in the capacity building. So UN as a United Nations as an international body is not just having people on the post, but it involves a lot of capacity building and community participation. So, for example, specialized wings such as the UNESCO, UNICEF, which would be seeing in the later slides, are also important through bringing the fostering of capacity building. Next is raising awareness, not only for human rights and so on, for lot of issues when it comes to vulnerable communities, when it comes to disabled communities. There are a lot of importance and awareness which is done by the OHCHR, and finally it supports to the UN bodies. As I told before, there are a lot of specialized agencies of UN bodies. It's not UN bodies, not just a fragment of 6 bodies, but it has subsidiary organizations where they all work together for the functionality of the global order. Now, looking into the OHCHR structure, first it involves the High Commissioner for the Human Rights. So, currently it is the Volker Turk, who is the UN Rights High Commissioner, where he is the person who wants to bring in the scrapping of the fact checking program when it comes to the social media. Next is having regional and field officers, where it involves working for the human rights in the regional areas and collaboration with other UN agencies, that is the UNHCR, that is Human Rights Council. Next is the UNICEF, which is the Children's Fund. Next is the UNESCO, and etc. So looking into the key areas of focus, they bring in the core documents or the charter, which is a universal declaration of human rights. Next is the International Covenant of the Civil and Political Rights and International Covenant of the Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. So here covenant is nothing but having a legal agreement. So these are the importance or area of focus in current generation, such as the contemporary issues on the online hate speech, digital rights violation, discrimination, racism, inequality, a lot of issues even between communities, and accountability for abuses. So even if I could report a comment, and I have reported a comment or a hate speech, after days after the fact checking program, I would be getting the message of that there is no hate speech involved, just because there is a procedure or just because there is a criteria for certain hate speeches to be considered as hate speech. So scrapping of this hate speech would, as I told before, would bring in the importance of addressing the real world issues. And finally, support for the vulnerable communities. Here, groups such as the refugees, minorities, women, and children are involved, and having an advocacy, that is freedom of speech and right to life of dignity. Now, looking into the connection of the OHCHR and India. So, India is a treaty signatory about both the ICCPR as well as the ICESR. So, whatever the decisions taken by the United Nations and all of its specialized wings and agencies, it is not legally binding. So, make sure that you understood that important point. So, I hope the article is clear. Now, looking into the prelims question, here the answer is only statement 1 and 3. The following statements about the OHCR. Here it was established by the UN General Assembly in 1993, and its headquarters is Geneva, Switzerland. Here it operates under not the UN Security Council, it operates under the Secretariat. Now, moving on to the next article titled Industrial Output Surges to 6-month high of 5.2% in November. So, this article discusses about the economic trends when it comes to the industrial sector and associated impact and challenges. So, through this article, we would be discussing the key indicators associated with it, the trend on it, and impact and challenges and associated government initiatives. So, before looking into the understanding of the trend, first we need to know the basics of the key economic indicators. So, when it comes to the key economic indicators, one of the main indicator would be the index of industrial production, that is the IIP. So their definition is they track the performance of the manufacturing, mining and electricity sectors. So when it comes to the industrial sectors, these three sectors, subsectors, that is the manufacturing, mining and electricity sectors, electricity basically indulging with the energy sectors, are the three main important sectors for the contribution of the industrial sector on a total. First, looking into their importance, they are key for the GDP computation or calculation. So the industrial sector almost gives a share for the GDP calculation. Thus, their role is very important when it comes to the macroeconomics of our country India. Sectors such as the manufacturing, mining and electricity produce industrial growth, and they this index is published monthly by the National Statistical Office under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. And for the index of the industrial production, always the base year is 2011 to 2012, because it has that present year, the present year is compared with those years, as at that current moment they had better representation of the industrial sector as well as the economic growth of the country India. So through the involvement of these three sectors for the improvement of industrial growth, it ultimately brings in the importance of policy making, which has a larger impact in the policy making of the industrial growth. Looking into the index of industrial production weightage, there is almost 77% importance to the manufacturing sector and the contribution, and through mining it has 14%, and in the electricity sector there is contribution of almost 7%, 7 to 8%. So let us look into the linked indicators when it comes to the IIP. First is the Purchasing Managers Index. They are the leading indicator of the manufacturing sector. So if the count is above 50, there is an expansion in the industrial growth, and if there is count in the below 50, there is contraction, that is there is reduction in the industrial growth. Next is the gross capital formation. That indicator focuses on the investment in the productive assets, that is the machinery, infrastructure, energy and so on. And the next indicator would be the inclusion of the core industries, that is the 8 key sectors, which involves coal, crude oil, natural gas, refinery, fertilizer, steel, cement and electricity. So these are the important 8 key sectors, or the important 8 core industries when it comes to industrial growth, and as well as an indicator, main indicator for any economic growth. So they significantly influence the importance of the index, the IIP. So I hope the concepts are clear. Now we will understand the importance of the industrial performance, which happened in the through the November 2024 trends. Now the article discusses about the overall growth, that is 5.2%, which is the highest in the month of April to November. So it is one of a significant change when it comes to the industrial growth sector. And looking into the cumulative growth from the April to November of 2024, it is a moderate increase, that is 4.1%. So understand the difference here. Overall growth means and increase in the growth or change in the starting to a end of a period. So here they have taken the month, they have taken the date of 6 months, that is April to November. So that is the overall growth. Now when it comes to cumulative growth, there is analyzation of the growth among multiple periods through the changes happened in those years or period. So it doesn't have a specific time period, but it takes multiple period in account to learn and understand the changes or the trends. So when we look into the cumulative growth, it is moderate, but specifically when we look into the April to November in 2024, it is the highest in the economic growth. So we can understand the trends when it comes to the importance of the economic growth through the sectors of the manufacturing, mining and electricity. So we will see the share of those sectors. Here in manufacturing, there is strong recovery of both the consumer and capital goods. Consumer goods, you can understand through the name, those are products or services for the consumers, and capital goods are mainly used for the businesses. When it comes to the electricity sector, there is substantial growth and there is an increase in demand, which also involves the energy sector in importance. And next is the mining sector. Here there is moderate performance and there's an improved extraction, so there is also labor intensive job creation in the mining sector also. So I hope this article is bit clear, as again it involves economics. So if you understand the importance of the industrial sector, the understanding of the trends would be easy. So this is the prelims question, and regarding the index of industrial production, only option A and C is right. So it is not published by the Reserve Bank of India, it is published by the NSO. Now let us move on to the next news. The news title, 2024 was hottest year ever, breached 1.5 degrees Celsius warning threshold. So according to this article, 2024 has become the first year to breach the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming mark, the World Meteorological Organization said. So again, the World Meteorological Organization comes under a specialized agent or a wing under the United Nations, and looking into the database, there has been increase of 1.55 degrees Celsius, which is higher than the pre-industrial times, which is average age of 1850 to 1990 period. So why we are taking this period, that is the pre-industrial times, as the comparison point when it comes to addressing the climate change degree increase, because the pre-industrial times were that period where there were no intervention of introduction of the technology or the higher usage of the or emission of the greenhouse gases. So that was the initial period of the climate to be on a control, and that wasn't a period where there were drastic climate change. So the pre-industrial times is always taken as a base when it comes to comparing the present or the current year of the global climate degree. So this database was taken from the Copernicus Climate Change Service, which is it was a funded specialized wing run by the European Center. So according to their forecasting, there has been a warning given that there could be an increase of the degree to 1.6 degrees Celsius higher than the pre-industrial levels, as 2024 overtakes the 2023 as the warmest year recorded. As 2023, it was recorded to be 1.45 degrees Celsius warmer than the pre-industrial times. So there is an important need for policy intervention as well as sustainable practices to address this issue. First, let us see the reasons for the heat waves in India in 2024. First would be the climate change. Here there is increase of global warming, that is increase of the emission of the greenhouse gases giving to global temperature rise. Then there is accelerated warming in India, that is sudden rise of temperatures which are due to the higher land surface, which we'll be seeing in further slides, and the occurrence of the El Nino, that is the periodic weather pattern in the Pacific Ocean specifically, where because of this El Nino there is disruption in the weather patterns, there has been reduced pre-monsoon rainfall and finally having prolonged dry spells. Next is the urban heat island effect. Here it is nothing but there is an increase of or rise of temperatures through the heat absorbing materials such as the concrete or the asphalt, where these are used for mainly having a urban coverage for the roads and so on. So in morning or in the day time there would be absorption of heat through these materials, and at night there would be slow release of these heat in the city. So it ultimately increases the urban heat of the urban cities, rising in the temperature, thus it is known as the urban heat island effect. So it is also due to the dense infrastructure where there is very limited scope for the green cover. So since there is limited green cover, it ultimately brings in the importance of having infrastructure. So there is dense or very packed or very compounded infrastructures for living capacity in the urban region. So there is urban heat island effect. Next would be ultimately deforestation, that has reduced the natural cooling. Then other factors such as agriculture, urbanization, migration, and development and infrastructural projects. Next is another agriculture practices like the crop stubble burning, releasing of heat and particles, which led to the pollution to be in a very rapid increase. Next is delayed monsoons because of the El Nino factor. Also, there is increase in the prolonged heat waves. We have seen a lot of cases when it comes to the heat waves. There has been casualties when it comes to heat waves, especially in the areas of northern and central India. And next is lack of adaptation, that is through the conservation policies. Here there is insufficient cooling strategies, insufficient or inadequate water conservation. So we can take the example of the flood of Chennai. Here the district, or the area of the Velachery, where they were supposed to be a lake area, there has been an intense or a dense infrastructure that leading to an inadequate water conservation and rapid increase of flood, and finally poor disaster management issues. So we have seen the reasons for the for the climate change, and now we would be seeing the mitigation measures. First is having a policy intervention. First one would be heat action plans. Here bringing in early warnings and public awareness and having a response participation, it can bring in the importance of having heat resilient infrastructure. So here we can increase the green covers, we can bring in the importance of smart cities and sustainable practices. Next, in bringing in afforestation practices and reforestation importance, bringing in urban forests, increasing the green corridors, especially for many conservations of different animals such as elephant, dolphins, where they significantly indicate the healthiness of the such green habitats or such important critical habitats such as turtles and so on. So everything is interconnected, not just with the green environment but also the species in it. Next is looking into the water management practices like rain harvesting, water storage, revival of the traditional water bodies. Here again we can take the example of Velachery Lake area in Chennai. So having infrastructural development for the water management can automatically link to the cooling effect of the cities especially. Next is public awareness, avoiding heat exposure during the peak hours, being hydrated, having cooling methods, having cooling kits and public shelters where NGOs and other specialized agents, other funding agents can bring in their investments. Looking into the technology and innovation along with renewable energy and energy sector, we are bringing in options of cool roofing solutions where there is white reflective coatings rather than adhesive or chemical coatings. Then climate resilient crops where there is introduction of GM crops, genetically modified crops, where there is introduction of many different agricultural and sustainable practices such as the drip irrigation. So technology also need to be involved in the agricultural sector. For example, we can take the drone scheme, that is the Namo drone Didi scheme, where the technology is being revolutionizing the agriculture in a very different way, where it is used for the application of fertilizers and pesticides and so on. And finally is having efficient of energy sector, that is the energy efficiency. Here we can bring in energy efficient cooling devices such as the solar powered ACs rather than the normally used ACs. We can bring in, reduce the reliance on the fossil fuels, and there are a lot of global aims, targets to reduce the dependency on the crude oils through global initiation, through international corporations and so on. So it's not just a problem of one country, but it's a problem of the earth on a whole. So I hope the article is clear, and let us see a prelims question. So, in reference to the heat waves in India, option 1 and 2 are correct. So, urban areas experience higher intensity of heat waves due to the urban heat island, and El Nino events can contribute to the occurrence of heat waves. So, heat action plans are not mandatory for all districts in India. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you are at the end of the video. Don't forget to give a like, comment and share, and further not to miss any other content, subscribe to our channel as the prelims are nearing and it would be easy for to have a consistency through the videos posted. So thank you and have a nice day.